The internet, with all its joys and all its worries and fears, do you think generally, broadly, it's a good thing, or are we seeing our way to Armageddon through it? Justin?
Obviously, it's produced wonderful things. I mean, I love the fact that on a weekly basis, I can talk to people all over the world in all kinds of different spheres and all kinds of different areas of theology and religion. And that would have never been possible, even 20 years ago, let's say, in the way it's possible today. At the same time, of course, you have all of the massive dangers of the voice it gives to extremists and everything else. So I think, like anything, like any God-given thing, it can be used for good and evil. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to ensure it gets used for good.
So my answer would be that it's not really whether it's good or bad, but it's rather that it's there and that it has changed things as the same way that digital culture has changed everything. And things are still changing. We're still trying to work it out. And the point of this conversation at the moment isn't necessarily is this going to be is this going to be like a doomsday for faith? Rather, it's what is it going to look like in the next 5 or 10 years?
I think social media really has been the key evolution regards religion. Because before then it was quite, discussion forums generally attracted people who belonged to those particular groups, and people would generally discuss things in their own particular groups to ratify what they already thought. But then social media has really kind of opened things up much more broadly. So on the whole, good, because it's given voice to people who maybe didn't have voices before. But as I say, depends how you use it.
One of the key issues with all this is around trust and authority, because there are so many voices out there, and I could set myself up as messiah and I could have a few misguided followers within the day, perhaps. But how do we know who to trust, and how do we know what has authority and what doesn't? It's such a tricky area.
I do think there are now, there's almost split worlds between the, if you like, what you might call traditional world, where there are certain voices of authority, and the online world, especially social media, which has its own whole set of voices of authority from within the religious sphere. But they tend to be the people who basically know how to use the technology best and can get their message out there most cogently and effectively and creatively. And those will be the people that get followed and are therefore the influencers.
For a young Sikh, for instance, who's from a family which already has an established authority structure or has a good relationship with a local gyani or priest or whatever, that sort of individual already has somebody to go to understand the tradition, has somebody to go to ratify the information that they found online. Whereas a person maybe who isn't in that sort of context is likely to pay more attention to what they find and the various different voices online. So different authorities do exist online, but the relationship between offline and online, I think, is very, very important to understand.
Scholars are deemed really important in the online space, but the people who are actually the more influential ones are the ones who are almost like patrons for those scholars. There are people who will kind of know how to use social media platforms really well, and what they'll say is that oh, you should listen to this scholar and this scholar and this scholar because they have all the answers. And actually this is kind of where a lot of conflict lies, because there are groups like Imams Online, for example, who do a lot of really good work, but one of the limitations that I think that they've had is that they've been trying to teach scholars how to use social media themselves. And that can be really difficult.
I want to move the conversation on slightly to look at the way that perhaps the online religious experience can replace traditional forms of Christian worship, Christian community, forgiveness, prayer. Can you actually have a proper discipleship, faith life, as it were, in the digital space with no connection to the more traditional?
The problem with all of the massive influx of digital is that it does not replace community, which is where I think wisdom happens, where we learn to live with other people, where we learn from the received wisdom of a group rather than sort of basically cherry picking for ourselves which voices we want to listen to. Because when I'm in church and I'm around other people who I haven't necessarily chosen to follow, or these aren't the people I would be putting on my podcast list or whatever it is, I'm forced to deal with people as they come, and that shapes me as a person.
So much of practice is about physical presence. So even things like Friday prayers, where you pray in congregation, what the role of local mosques should be doing. So in my case, I'm a member at a mosque that I very rarely go to, but I know that when I pass away, they'll sort out my burial and everything, which is, they'll sort out my parents' like stuff, which is, pretty grim to talk about, but also like pretty reassuring at the same time. That stuff you're not going to get online. When you're looking at like religious obligation and you're looking at religious congregation, like I don't think that the online world can ever really replace that because it's not built to do that.
There's two different kinds of community here. There's your local community, which you can't really, step out of, whereas your online community you can kind of dip in and out of as you wish. So the whole emphasis of community and serving the community is very, very important in the Sikh tradition. Many of you would have partaken in food in Lunga. I don't know how that would work online. Would Sikhs order pizzas to people's houses?
Looking to our respective religious founders, as it were, Guru Nanak and Muhammad and Jesus, do you think they would have participated in this social media world? Would they have had their own Twitter handle? And if so, what might it have been?
I think Jesus, judging by the way he acted and spoke and taught in the Gospels, was willing to embrace the technology of the time, if you like, which was basic compared to us, but was essentially, he drew crowds and he used stories which were engaging and creative and helped people to, put faith and life together. And in that sense, I'd see no reason why Jesus wouldn't have used the tools of modern technology to do that.
So Guru Nanak travelled he did 4 long journeys, 13 miles a day, didn't really proselytize, but he went to places and kind of tried to lead by example. So it was all about the human interaction. So I think rather than chasing likes and followers, it'd be more about, I'm going to be here today. Let's have a chat. And it wouldn't all be about, this is me, this is a photo of me, blah, blah, blah. So I think, occasional tweeting, but more about the human interactions.
I don't think Prophet Muhammad would be on social media, but I think like the followers would be, because like so much of like Quranic language and interpretation was spread not by Prophet Muhammad, but by the early Hadith scholars and the early companions. So, and they were the ones who were like writing things down. They were the ones who were spreading messages. They were the ones who were giving lectures, especially after the death of the Prophet and everything. So in that sense, that was maybe like the social like media at the time, if you want to like draw a parallel to that. So I think, maybe not him, but maybe the followers would.